In the decades after the Second World War, the old colonial properties of Southeast Asia became independent nations. At the same time, China, the old homeland, was racked by a succession of convulsive changes before emerging as a modern economic superpower. In the Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia, people of Chinese descent faced new challenges and demands on their loyalty. They were now Malaysians, Filipinos, and Indonesians. What does their ancestry mean to them in the 21st century? The answer is clear: a very great deal. Even in Indonesia, the most populous Islamic nation in the world, and comprising 17,000 islands and more than 300 ethnic groups, the Chinese still maintain their centuries-old traditions. Across the straits in Malaysia, relations between different ethnicities, above all the Chinese and Malays, is still as delicately balanced as this spinning top or this kite. Great skill is required to keep the kite flying and the top spinning. Even after 500 years, the Chinese in Malaysia often have to work hard to keep up their traditions. The key is education. Take the case of the Funyu High School in the Johor Bahru, just across the causeway from Singapore. Back in the 1950s, the school governors refused to adopt a national curriculum requirement to teach in English and insisted on continuing as a Chinese school. Since they had cut themselves off from state funding bodies, it was a long struggle to find the money and teachers to rebuild the school, but they succeeded. Today, Funyu High School is one of the most prestigious schools in Malaysia.
天时地利人和啦，好像在吉隆坡一个小地方就有8间独中，在新山50公里内只有唯一一间独中，所以很多的这个华裔子弟、华裔的家长啊，都很有意愿要把孩子送到这里来。
华校有一个传统是有校训，我们学校有校训，我们的校训4个字：诚爱忠义。就做人要有诚心啊，要有爱心啊，那么我们说要忠心，忠心呢对自己本身、对家庭、对这个社会、对国家，都必须要有忠诚、忠心。人生历程里面会碰到很多的困难，那么必须要有很坚持的毅力、坚强的毅力，那才能够克服啊。这个是我们的校训。
Singaporeans call their nation a little red dot on the equator, but it's a dot that has seen tremendous turmoil and conflict. The city commemorates the early Chinese migrants who did so much to build this prosperous republic that is still young and in search of an identity. From the top of this skyscraper, they say you can see Singapore's past, present, and future. At the top of the world, Chef Justin rules the kitchen. All day, he gives orders in English, Cantonese, Mandarin, and Bahasa Malay. Justin is Singapore.
1 egg or 2 eggs? 1 or 2? 1 egg. Okay.
我爸爸妈妈是祖籍是潮州然后我是第一代新加坡人。最近我有去汕头，就听他们说那个潮州跟我们现在潮州不一样，因为现在我们潮州在这里肯定跟有马来语混合在一起，讲的语言现在不一样。
Justin cooks with confidence, meshing styles from all over Asia and Europe, but he wants to proclaim a unique Chinese signature.
因为我的训练是法式料理，就是 French cuisine。我用这个概念，就用我们的中式，好像我们在潮州有一道菜就是卤水鹅，是吗？我用这卤水这个材料是吗？这个水去做那个法国的鹅肝，用法国的艺术来做，但是味道现在是卤水，这很重要，因为你如果不懂那个文化，你做不到这道菜。
Okay, let's go.
Like Justin's dishes, Singapore lies at a crossroads between East and West, between tradition and modernity. Its economic culture is vibrant and thrusting, benefiting from its unique position in a globalized world. The majority of overseas Chinese are no longer Chinese citizens, and yet they still hold to traditional values. There are no better examples than the story that unfolded here in Manila in the Philippines. Back then, most buildings in the Chinese Quarter were made of wood. Fires were frequent and lethal, but nothing was done. Then in 1968, a huge blaze ripped through a giant warehouse, causing terrible damage. As the ashes cooled, the Chinese community leaders resolved to act. They established the Federation of Filipino Voluntary Chinese Firemen. Today, the 200-strong federation puts out fires all over the Philippines and often outperforms the state fire service.
我们这个组织的志愿消防队呢，就是我们要保护菲律宾老百姓的生命财产，不分我们华侨还是菲律宾人，我们跟菲律宾人我们更重视，特别呢是穷民住的地方我们更重视。一有了小小的火灾，我们马上就跑去了。
The spirit of community values is still cherished all over the Southern Ocean. The Chinese have been here in Palembang, the second biggest city in Sumatra, for more than 600 years. Every day, early in the morning, Dr. Armin drives downtown to distribute his free Chinese language newspaper. Dr. Armin himself funds some of the cost of producing the paper. The rest comes from the local community. He wants his newspaper to transmit news and promote Chinese culture.
哎，老板娘你好，给你送报过来了，新的啊。
OK， 谢谢你啊。
哈。看尽可能等下分量，我们再增加吧。好，
在印尼，我们已经断成了34年的华文教育。趁着现在有机会，而且已经准许我们使用中文吧，所以说我尽我的力量，尽量的宣扬吧。那个是我们一个办报的一个宗旨。
Dr. Armin's newspaper is just one example of the way the Chinese in the Southern Ocean have preserved their ancient culture and language. In doing so, they have created their own unique heritage. The epic history of the overseas Chinese has been a long and arduous journey to a brave new world. Today, they have every reason to hope that a more enlightened path lies ahead, one they make their own way as citizens of newly forged Southeast Asian nations.
这一些华人呢，也可以说是一种现代的华人，现代化的华人，不是西化，现代化的华人，他是同时是华人，保留多多少少的传统，不一定纯粹的，不保留一点，同时也吸收了外来的影响，东南亚的、西方的、先进的、科技的都有。表面上完全是讲华人的文化，但是呢，他是鼓励他的了解，怎么看世界，怎么看前途，怎么看这个将来的变化，将来的这个中国，他们有他们的想法，跟中国就不相同。
中国传统文化里面的优秀素质，像节俭，像勤劳，像尊老爱幼、重视家庭、以人为本，这些本身就是普世价值。他坚持的是中华传统文化里普世价值的东西，同时也接受西洋文化里面普世价值的东西。这个呢是南洋华人文化的一个跟大陆文化比较现在的比较区别的地方。
Every flower has its own beauty, and if you put those flowers together, they become more beautiful.